I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd crash a baby shower, let alone one hosted by my husband's family, let alone one where the baby wasn't mine but should have been. For 3 years, I gave my body to science in the name of motherhood. Injections, hormones, procedures. Month after month of peeing on sticks and praying. Month after month of failure. Hi everyone. Before we dive into this story full of betrayal, heartbreak, and a bit of cold, sweet revenge, don't forget to hit subscribe if you love true stories with wild twists and powerful endings. It really helps the channel grow, and I promise you don't want to miss how this one ends. Every time the test came back negative, I crumbled. Every time I broke down, Daniel, my husband, picked me up. Or so I thought. He'd hold me, wipe my tears, and say, "We're in this together." His eyes looked sincere. His hands were warm. And his lies were smooth. We tried everything. Natural. Medicated. IUI. And finally, IVF. 5 rounds. 5 devastating attempts. By the time we reached the 4th failed cycle, our savings were gone. We were emotionally bankrupt, and nearly financially, too. So when the doctor said the 5th round was our last realistic shot, and Daniel suggested taking out a second mortgage on the house, I said yes. I said yes because I believed this man wanted a child with me. I said yes because I thought we were a team. I said yes because I had no idea what he was really doing behind my back. He told me, "We go all in." His words. One last time. If it works, great. If not, we walk away knowing we tried everything. I nodded, even though my heart was already sore. My body was already tired. But I didn't want to be the reason we didn't try. I didn't want to look back with regret. So I let him sign the papers. We refinanced our house. Put in over $20,000 for one more try. More medications. More needles. More silent prayers into my pillow at night. The 2-week wait after the transfer was the worst part. You have to pretend to be calm, to not let stress interfere. But inside, you're screaming every hour. Hoping. Imagining. Then the call came. Negative. Again. I didn't scream. I didn't sob. I just sat there on the kitchen floor, staring at the phone. I wasn't even sure what was left to cry. Daniel held me. Said all the right things. But something was off. I couldn't explain it then, but it felt empty. Like he was going through the motions. Like he already knew it wouldn't work. That night, while he slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering if this was it. If I would ever be a mother. If we would survive this. The next day, while sorting through online bills to see how tight money would be for the next few months, I noticed a charge I didn't recognize. $429.50 to something called Baby Bliss online. I didn't remember ordering anything baby-related lately. We hadn't even touched the half-painted nursery in months. I thought maybe it was a mistake, so I clicked on the receipt. My stomach turned. A crib. Organic bedding. A baby monitor. Shipped directly to Emily Bannon, my sister-in-law. I blinked. Maybe it was a gift? Maybe Daniel bought something for her friend's baby? But something about it felt wrong. So I went to her social media. She wasn't super active, but in her most recent story was a caption that said, "Counting down the days. Can't wait to meet you, little one, 2 hearts, #baby on board, #shower soon." I sat frozen. Emily wasn't pregnant. She was single. No mention of fostering. No adoption news. So how was she having a baby? I started digging deeper. In her tagged photos, I found one that changed everything. She was standing next to a woman I didn't recognize, holding a framed photo of an ultrasound. The caption? "Surrogacy is a journey of love. Grateful to be growing our family." And then it hit me. No. No way. I went back to the receipt and checked the billing info. It wasn't from Emily. It was from Daniel. He'd used our joint account. The same one we paid our IVF clinic with. The same one we drained to get pregnant. My vision blurred. My hands went cold. I clicked over to Daniel's email, which I had access to because we used the same family account for medical stuff. And there it was. Email after email with surrogacy agencies, legal documents, payment receipts. But none of it included my name. Just his and Emily's. I opened one from months ago, long before our final IVF round. They'd been working on this behind my back. While I was injecting myself daily with hormones, hoping for our child, he was secretly helping his sister have hers. But it gets worse. In one message to the agency, Daniel described himself as single and listed no spouse on the legal forms. He erased me. He used our house, our money, and my fertility breakdown, all while planning a secret surrogacy with his sister. I didn't cry. I went still. That kind of stillness that only happens when your world stops spinning. For 2 days, I said nothing. I didn't confront him. I needed more than a fight. I needed proof. So I kept digging. I contacted the surrogacy agency pretending to be Emily. I told them I lost the contract and needed the details. I don't even know how I kept my voice steady. They sent it. My heart stopped when I read it. Daniel was listed as the biological father. The embryo was his. The egg donor anonymous. Emily had been approved as the intended parent. It was all legal. All finalized. Due in 6 weeks. They used my grief as a cover to get everything done. I couldn't scream. I was too busy planning. I wasn't going to confront him in the kitchen. I wasn't going to cry in our half-empty nursery. No. I was going to show up. He didn't know I found the baby shower invitation in his sock drawer. I wasn't invited, of course. Why would I be? I wasn't part of the family anymore. I was just the woman who financed the whole operation. But I wasn't coming alone. Because I found the surrogate. Her name was Sydney. And guess what? She had no idea Daniel was married. No idea he was helping his sister. She thought he was a single father looking to raise a baby on his own. When I told her everything, she cried. I cried. And then she said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to ruin their perfect day with the truth." And she said, "I'll be there." People always talk about the moment before. That silence before a big speech, the breath before a breakup, the heartbeat before a car crash. For me, that moment was standing across the street from Emily's house, wearing a calm expression that didn't match the firestorm inside me. In my hand, a sleek black envelope filled with legal printouts, emails, and receipts. And standing next to me, dressed in white with her hair up in a neat twist, was Sydney, the surrogate. She looked more nervous than me, and I don't blame her. She had been lied to as much as I had, just in a different way. She didn't know Daniel was married. She didn't know her body was carrying a child paid for by betrayal. And yet, when I called her and laid it all out, she didn't hesitate. "I'll come," she said. "He doesn't get to lie to both of us." We'd agreed, no screaming. No drama for drama's sake. Just the truth, served cold, at the worst possible time. The front yard was decorated like a Pinterest dream. Balloons, roses, floating banners. Baby Bannon is almost here. Every fake smile. Every pastel bow. Every folding chair arranged for people to pretend that lies weren't holding this whole party together. As we walked up the driveway, I could hear laughter. Music. The clink of champagne flutes. Daniel and Emily were laughing. Laughing. I'd cried so much over the last 6 weeks, I didn't even feel tears anymore. Just that steady, clean burn you get after the pain fades, and only focus remains. I reached the door and didn't knock. I opened it. The room went quiet. Just like in a movie, the music kept playing softly in the background, but every head turned. Emily was front and center, wearing a sash that said "Mom-to-be," with one hand on her belly, as if she were pregnant herself. She wasn't, of course. Sydney was. And she had just walked in beside me. Daniel saw us first. His entire face fell. He looked like someone had hit him in the chest with a shovel. I actually watched his hand twitch toward Emily, like he was about to shield her or whisper abort mission. "Too late. Claire?" Emily said, her voice cracking. I smiled. Friendly. Controlled. "Hope we're not too late," I said. "It looks like you're almost done unwrapping everything paid for with my mortgage." The crowd didn't know what to do with that. You could feel it, the shift. That slow collective understanding that something very wrong was happening. Emily blinked. Daniel started walking toward me, like I was a wild animal about to maul the punch table. "Claire," he whispered. "What are you doing?" "What you didn't think I was capable of," I said, telling the truth. He reached out like he was going to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Oh, no touching today. Especially since you lied on legal documents saying you were single." Now, people were definitely listening. Phones were subtly being pulled out. "Who is that?" someone whispered from behind the cake table, nodding to Sydney. "I'm the one actually pregnant," Sydney said.
"Hi.
"You must be the guests of honor." I was under the impression this was a celebration of Daniel's single fatherhood journey. The crowd's confused murmurs turned into full-on shock. Someone gasped. Emily looked like she might throw up. I opened the envelope and started pulling out papers. "This," I said, "is the mortgage transfer document signed by both me and Daniel." It freed up the funds for one last round of IVF for me, which failed, of course. And this, I held up a printed email, is a message from Daniel to the surrogacy agency dated 2 weeks earlier, approving payment for a completely different pregnancy. Emily tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "Here's the contract listing Daniel as a single father. Here's his bank statement paying for nursery items with our joint account. And here," I held up one last paper, "is the email he sent the agency claiming I didn't exist." The room was dead silent now. Sydney added, "When I signed on, I was told the baby would be raised by a single father. I was never told about a wife. I would have never agreed if I had known the truth." Daniel finally snapped. "Claire, stop this. This isn't the place." I turned on him. "No, Daniel. You don't get to tell me where the place is. I stabbed my stomach with needles for 3 years. I bled. I cried. I broke. And all that time, you were helping your sister play dress-up mom behind my back." Emily stuttered. "It wasn't like that, Claire." "You let me believe I was part of a family," I snapped. "And when I failed, when I couldn't give you what you wanted, you replaced me without even telling me."
But you didn't just lie. You used me."
"You spent my future. You took my house, my hope, my body, and gave the reward to her." Emily's mother tried to step forward, but Sydney cut her off. "I'm terminating the contract," she said. "Legally, I'm within my rights due to fraudulent information in the agreement. I'll be going through my lawyer. There will be no handoff of this child under these circumstances." The ripple that went through the room was thunderous. People stood up. Some quietly walked out. Others looked back and forth between Emily and Daniel like they were watching a slow-motion car crash. Daniel tried one last time. "You're making a mistake, Claire. You're ruining lives." "No," I said. "You ruined mine. I'm just finally standing in it." And with that, I turned and walked out. Sydney followed. We didn't look back. When we got to the car, we sat in silence for a full minute. Then she reached over, squeezed my hand, and said, "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." I didn't feel brave. I felt free. I moved out 2 days later. Daniel tried calling, texting, emailing, saying he could fix it. I never replied. A few weeks later, I learned through Sydney's lawyer that Daniel and Emily had hired a PR firm to help clean up the mess and quietly relocated the surrogate agreement to a new agency. She'd refused to work with them again. I didn't ask what happened to the baby. It wasn't mine to save. Instead, I started over. I filed for divorce. I took my portion of the house in the split and sold it. With the money, I moved across the country, started therapy, and applied for solo adoption. I met a little boy named Miles 6 months later. He doesn't share my DNA, but he's mine. And when he's old enough to understand betrayal, I'll tell him, never let someone write you out of your own story. Even if they lie, even if they steal, even if they build an entire fake family with your blood, sweat, and tears, you walk in anyway. And when you do, you walk in holding the truth. Because in the end, that's what burns louder than revenge. The drive home from the baby shower was quiet, not because there wasn't anything to say, but because we both knew there was too much. Sydney dropped me off at my car with a hug and a whispered, "You didn't deserve any of that." She was right, but part of me still felt like I did. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because that's what betrayal does. It worms into your sense of worth until you start thinking maybe you were too much, or not enough, or both. I walked into my house like it was someone else's life. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar anymore. Daniel was gone. He hadn't come back after the baby shower disaster, at least not that day. His car wasn't in the driveway. His keys weren't on the hook. I didn't care where he went. I just knew it wasn't here. The silence was finally mine.
I didn't sleep that night.
I didn't cry either. I just sat in the nursery, the unfinished one, still only half-painted in dusty teal. The crib still in its box, unopened. I had picked that color thinking it would be neutral in case it was a boy or a girl or twins. I used to sit in that room and dream. Now I sat there and planned. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Nora, and she didn't flinch when I told her everything. She didn't pity me either, which I appreciated more than I expected. She just said, "You ready to fight?" And I was. Divorce papers were filed 2 days later. My lawyer made sure to include every receipt, every bank statement, every time-stamped invoice that proved Daniel had committed financial infidelity and misappropriated marital assets. That's the clean legal way to say, he stole from our future to build someone else's. I froze our joint accounts, changed passwords, opened a new bank account in my name only. Daniel found out when his card got declined at a gas station.
He called me.
"Claire, what the hell?" I answered calmly. "Oh, we're speaking now. You froze the account."
Yes.
I also filed for divorce. You'll be served today. You can direct questions to my attorney. You're overreacting. I actually laughed. Overreacting would have been setting your car on fire. I'm giving you the dignity of paperwork. He cursed. I hung up. Emily called next. She left a long, rambling voicemail where she tried to say she didn't mean for any of this to happen the way it did. That Daniel just wanted to help. That she thought I knew deep down. That it wasn't meant to hurt me. I didn't respond. There are no words for people who weaponize silence against you, then beg for kindness when they get caught. Legally, it got messy fast. Daniel tried to claim the surrogacy was a gift, and that the money used came from his side of our finances. But Nora was ruthless. She pointed out that all our funds were legally marital, and since I could prove he misused them without my knowledge, it became a case of fraudulent asset transfer. He could either settle quietly or risk a judge getting involved. He settled. I got half the house. I sold it. I got a chunk of the savings account he thought I didn't know about. I donated a portion of it to a nonprofit that helps women going through fertility treatments alone. Petty? Maybe. But healing comes in strange forms. After the financials were done, came the silence. The real silence. Not the kind in the nursery. The kind that sits inside you. That quiet after heartbreak, where your days aren't bad, just empty. I started therapy. Weekly at first. I didn't want to go, but I made myself. That's the thing people don't tell you about healing. It doesn't feel good at first. It feels like unpacking a closet full of memories you'd rather never see again. My therapist asked, "Do you still want to be a mother?" The question hit harder than I thought. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I did. Yes. Then she said, "Good. Let's work on how." I learned about solo adoption. Not easy, not fast, but possible. I joined online groups.
Talked to women like me.
Women who were tired of asking for permission to dream. And months later, I met Miles. 6 months old. Wide eyes. A laugh that came out in squeaks. He wasn't mine the way I once pictured. He didn't grow inside me. I didn't get to pick the nursery theme while rubbing my belly and picking names with someone I loved. But the first time he wrapped his hand around my finger and looked up at me like I was the only thing that mattered, that was everything. Not revenge. Not justice.
Peace.
That's what no one talks about in these stories. The revenge is satisfying. The confrontation?
Sure.
The exposed lies?
Great.
But peace, real, earned, daily peace, is the part that matters. I get up now, and there's no weight in my chest. No wondering where Daniel is, or whether the life I'm living is real.
I know who I am.
I know what I survived. And I know what I built after everything he destroyed. Miles is 2 now. He calls me Mama. He thinks the sun comes out just for him. And every night when I read him a book and tuck him in, I walk past that old framed ultrasound photo I kept, the one from our last failed cycle. Not as a wound, not anymore, but as a reminder of what I thought I wanted, of what I endured, and of what I found when I stopped chasing someone else's version of a family. I still see Daniel sometimes on social media. Mutual friends share things. Last I heard, Emily moved states and the baby? I don't know. Maybe it worked out. Maybe it didn't. I don't care. I don't wish them pain. I don't wish them joy. I wish them distance. My life isn't about them anymore. It's about the boy in footy pajamas with a crayon-streaked face who calls me his world. The one who doesn't care how he got here. Only that I'm his. And I am. I chose him. Just like finally I chose me. After the dust settled, after the courtroom filings, the frozen accounts, the last signatures on the divorce papers, you'd think it would be over. And for a while I was finally living alone in a smaller but peaceful apartment, far from that too big, too empty house. The one with the half-painted nursery and echoing lies in every room. Miles had just started crawling. He was curious about everything. Outlets,
Shoes.
cabinet doors. I bought every baby-proofing gadget Amazon would ship. He kept outsmarting them all. I was exhausted in the best possible way. My life was finally quiet, and I liked it that way. I was rebuilding, not just emotionally, but practically too. During my marriage, I'd taken a part-time step back from my career. Daniel made more than enough to carry us, and I had been focused on IVF appointments, procedures, resting between cycles, and managing hope. But now, that chapter was closed. I had a child, a legal divorce, a name I reclaimed. So I rebuilt. I reopened my old consulting business, updated my portfolio, and started taking on clients again. Slowly at first, then faster than I expected. Turns out, years of fighting to become a mom made me stronger, not weaker.
People trusted me.
Clients stuck around. I was good at what I did. Better, even. I wasn't just trying to make ends meet. I was building a life I could be proud of. Miles deserved a mom who stood tall. I deserved that, too. And then, right when I stopped looking over my shoulder, Daniel showed up. Not physically, he wouldn't dare, but digitally. It started with an email. Just a subject line. I've been thinking about us. I stared at it for a while. It had been almost 9 months since the baby shower. Since I'd walked out. Since I'd said, "You don't get to rewrite the story without me." I wasn't angry when I saw the message. I wasn't anxious. I was curious. So I opened it. The first line? "Claire, I know I don't deserve a response, but I hope you'll read this." He went on to say how everything had spiraled after I left. How Emily moved to another state. How their surrogacy agreement had fallen apart and the surrogate made things legally difficult. Translation: she refused to hand over the baby under fraudulent terms. He didn't even say the baby was born. He was vague. He danced around details like I wouldn't notice. Then came the part one didn't expect. "I miss you. I miss what we had. And I think about what our family could have been every single day." I scoffed. What we could have been. We could have been parents. We could have been whole. But instead, he tried to build a secret family with his sister and erase me from the equation like I was just a failed science experiment. Still, I kept reading. "I know it's probably too late, but if you ever wanted to talk, I'd love to meet, even just as friends. You're the best person I ever knew." And then the kicker. "I heard you adopted. I hope he brings you the joy we never found." I sat there, rereading that line. We never found? I found it. He didn't. That's the difference. I didn't reply. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't boiling over with rage. I just wasn't available for this man anymore. I deleted the email. Then I blocked his address. A week later, a bouquet arrived at my office. Tulips. My favorite, once upon a time. The card just said, "Still sorry. Still hoping.
D.
I threw it out. Then came the voicemail. He must have used a new number because his name didn't come up. Claire, I know I'm the villain in your story. I know I messed up. But I'm trying to change. I'd give anything to just talk to you. Please. This time, I didn't delete it. I kept it. Because someday, when Miles is older and asks me about his biological dad, the one he never knew, I'll play him that voicemail. And I'll tell him the truth. That real men don't just say they're sorry. They change. Daniel didn't. A few months later, I ran into one of Daniel's old friends at a coffee shop. She looked uncomfortable the moment she recognized me. I smiled anyway. We chatted briefly. I didn't mention the email, or the flowers, or the voicemail. I didn't ask about Emily. I didn't even ask about the baby. But she told me anyway. Emily's surrogacy collapsed legally. The surrogate retained custody for months during a dispute. Daniel had tried to step in, but the courts denied his claim. Apparently, he didn't pass the psychological evaluation after everything came out. He had a breakdown.
Quit his job.
Moved back in with their parents for a while. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just nodded and walked away. Because his collapse was none of my business anymore. My business was a gig for a new nonprofit. A batch of healthy muffins on the counter. A toddler in a Spider-Man bib throwing applesauce at my clean floors. That was my real revenge. Survival. Better yet, joy. I don't check his social media anymore. I don't care who he's dating or whether he fixed his life. I care that my son says thank you without being told. That he runs to hug me when I walk in the door. That he calls me mama like it's the most important word he knows. I care that when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who was dragged through hell and walked out still holding herself upright. That's what healing looks like. Not a movie ending. Not a grand speech. Just steady, quiet mornings. Clean dishes. A home without secrets. And the knowledge that when the person who broke you finally came crawling back, you didn't need them anymore. I always thought dating again after divorce would feel like peeling off a scab. Awkward, exposed, maybe a little bloody. Turns out, it felt more like walking through a quiet street after a hurricane. Everything is still standing, but nothing's in the same place anymore. I waited almost a year before I tried. Not because of fear, exactly. More because I didn't want to bring anyone into a story I hadn't fully finished writing. I needed to know I could wake up, raise my son, and live with myself before I let someone else in. By then, Miles was talking. Not full sentences, but enough to turn my heart to butter at least once an hour. Mama, hugs. Mama, blue sky. Mama, no peas. That last one was screamed dramatically with every dinner. I'd rebuilt my consulting business. I had a steady income. I had my peace. So I thought, why not try? My therapist had warned me, there's no shame in being cautious, Claire. But don't use healing as a wall. Let it be a door. Fine. I opened the door. I downloaded 2 dating apps. Set my filters narrow. I wasn't looking for perfection, just someone emotionally fluent enough to have basic empathy and not lie about starting a secret family behind my back. Apparently, that was still too much to ask for most of them. The first few dates were textbook awkward. One guy spent 30 minutes explaining Bitcoin to me without asking a single question about my life. Another asked if I'd gotten over the infertility thing and then offered to fix it the natural way.
Yeah, gross.
I deleted the apps for a month after that one. But eventually I tried again. And that's when I met Eli. No fanfare. No butterflies. Just steady. We matched on a Sunday. Messaged for a week. Then met at a bookstore cafe. He showed up wearing a plain gray t-shirt and beat-up Converse. He ordered chamomile tea. I liked that he didn't try too hard. We talked about music. Work. Favorite childhood books. It felt like breathing, not impressing. After the second date, I told him I had a son. His eyebrows lifted. Not in surprise, but in something gentler. Like respect. Can I ask what happened? He said. So I told him the short version.
Divorced.
Adopted.
Single by choice.
And he nodded and said, that's badass. No judgment. No weird hesitation. Just a smile and, "I'd love to meet him sometime if that's something you'd ever be okay with." I was stunned. I didn't expect someone like Eli, someone soft-spoken but grounded, to want anything to do with someone like me. A woman with baggage.
A past you need a chart to explain.
A kid who came with applesauce tantrums and a bedtime story routine longer than most movie scripts. But Eli didn't flinch. He met Miles 2 months later at a public park. I kept it casual. Introduced him as Mama's friend. Miles immediately tried to climb him like a jungle gym. Eli laughed and caught him like he'd been doing it for years. That was the moment I knew. This might be real. We didn't rush. He didn't push. I didn't pretend to be ready before I was. But we built something.
Slowly. Carefully.
With trust in every brick. And then one afternoon, almost a year after our first date, Eli sat across from me on the couch while Miles napped and asked something I didn't expect. Would it be okay if I asked about Daniel? My stomach tightened just a little. What about him? Just, what would you want Miles to know someday? If he asks. I hadn't let myself think about that. What do you say to a child who doesn't share your DNA about the man who should have been their father figure, but used your body and your heartbreak as collateral? What do you say when they're old enough to ask? I don't know, I said. Maybe that his mother learned the hard way what love wasn't, and that he doesn't need someone else's genes to be mine. Eli reached over and took my hand. Sounds like the truth to me. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. A real one. Not an email. Not a voicemail. A handwritten envelope. The return address. Daniel. I almost threw it away without opening it. Almost. But curiosity wins when you've been hurt, even after you've healed. Inside was a 4-page letter. His handwriting looked rushed. It wasn't angry. It wasn't apologetic either. It was confused. He said he saw photos of me and Miles online. A mutual friend had reposted a birthday party album. He said he didn't expect me to look that happy. That it was hard to see me smiling with someone else's child when we never got ours. That line? That's the one that made my hand curl tight around the paper. Someone else's child. He still didn't get it. He still thought biology was the prize. That DNA defined belonging. I didn't respond. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I walked to my desk, grabbed a pen, and wrote 2 sentences on a blank card. He is mine. Not because of blood, but because I chose him. Just like I stopped choosing you. I didn't send it. I didn't need to. It was enough to write it, fold it, and drop it into the shredder. That was the last I heard from Daniel. No more letters. No more voicemails. No more flowers or emails pretending he hadn't tried to erase me from my own future. And Eli? He's still here. We're not rushing. No wedding bells. No promises we can't keep. But some mornings I wake up to him making Miles pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, both of them laughing like they invented the sun. And I think to myself, this isn't the life I planned. It's better. Because it's mine. And no one, not a lying ex, not a broken dream, not even infertility, gets to take it away. Life was quiet again. Not perfect. Miles was entering his why phase, and every sentence in our house ended in a question. Why is the moon up in the morning? Why don't pancakes come from trees? Why do grown-ups sigh so much? Fair question. But even with the chaos of parenting and work and laundry I never seemed to catch up on, things felt steady. Eli was still around. Still slow. Still kind. Still careful with the cracks I was learning to stop hiding. He never tried to fix me. Just sat with me in the pieces until I remembered I wasn't broken anymore. And then one Thursday morning, everything tilted again. It started with an envelope. Not a bill. Not junk mail. A thick, stamped envelope from a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter, still wearing Miles's cereal splattered across my pajama shirt. The first line hit like a punch. To Claire L., regarding a formal petition from the Bannon family. I sat down. Heart pounding. It was a petition for visitation rights. From Emily, my ex-sister-in-law. The one who let me bleed through IVF while secretly building a family behind my back. The one who tried to use my husband, my money, and a surrogate to become a mother, while cutting me out completely. Now she wanted access to Miles. Not custody, not full rights, but visitation. Legal, regular, recognized by the state. I couldn't breathe. The letter claimed that Emily had a long-standing emotional connection to the child, and that maintaining a familial bond would serve the child's best interest. I almost laughed. She had never met Miles, never seen him, never called, never wrote, and now she wanted him to call her Aunt Emily?
No, no, no.
Absolutely not. I called my lawyer immediately. Nora, as always, was calm. I've seen this before, she said. It's a tactic. Weak case. But they're hoping to pressure you into a meeting. Maybe a settlement. Maybe a phone call. Do not engage directly. Too late. I had already typed and deleted for emails, 10 text drafts, and 2 messages that would have probably made a judge sigh audibly. Nora told me to sit tight. She'd handle the response. I hung up, shaking. The idea that Emily had the nerve, the audacity, to try and legally insert herself into my son's life after everything? It was like she thought the world had forgotten what she did. I hadn't. I pulled out the folder I kept in the back of my closet. The one with all the receipts. Printed emails. Bank statements. Surrogacy contracts. The documentation I used during my divorce. It was all still there. And I added the petition to it. Because if she wanted a legal fight, she was going to get one. I didn't tell Eli right away. I needed to process it first. When I finally did, he went still. Do you want me to say something rational or furious? He asked. Start with furious. She's out of her mind. You owe her nothing. That woman is dangerous. He was right. But I still felt that old burn in my chest, the fear that someone could take even a piece of what I built. That someone might confuse biology for entitlement. Nora filed the response within 48 hours. Her argument was simple. Emily had no legal relationship to the child. No established bond. No previous attempt at visitation. And the petition, at its core, was retaliatory, an attempt to regain control or connection after years of deception and harm. 2 weeks later, Emily's team withdrew the petition. They claimed miscommunication. That's lawyer speak for we knew we'd lose, but wanted to rattle you. I wasn't rattled. I was reminded that even when you move on, the people who broke you don't always stay gone. Sometimes they creep back in with pretty language and polished signatures and phrases like, in the child's best interest. But I wasn't who I used to be. Not the desperate wife injecting hormones and hoping for a future I couldn't control. Not the woman crying in a half-painted nursery. I was the mother of a son who deserved peace, not legacy trauma wrapped in family. After the petition was dropped, I sat with Miles one evening on the back porch. He had fallen asleep with a popsicle still in his hand, face sticky, shirt stained. I looked down at him and whispered, "You're safe. No one's getting in." Because the truth is, it's not always about revenge. It's about protection. It's about being the one who draws the line when the past tries to crawl into your future and pretend it belongs. Emily hasn't tried again. Daniel hasn't either. Sometimes I think about why she did it. If it was guilt.
Or pride.
Or some last-ditch attempt to rewrite the story in her favor. It doesn't matter. I didn't just survive them. I outgrew them. I rose from everything they tried to bury me in, and I'm raising a son who'll never have to wonder whether he was chosen. Because he was. Every single day. It's strange how life begins to feel soft again. I remember thinking, back when it all fell apart, that I'd never trust anyone again. Never breathe without that tightness in my chest. That I'd always feel like something was missing, even if I rebuilt, even if I moved on. But that was before I learned what real peace feels like. It doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself. It just sits beside you quietly, watching your child fall asleep in your arms, and whispers, "You're safe now." That's what life became. Quiet.
Safe. Whole.
Eli and I weren't rushing. We were taking our time. I liked that he never treated Miles like a puzzle piece to be figured out, just a person to love, one giggle at a time. And then one Thursday afternoon, something happened I never expected. It was a letter. But not from a lawyer. Not from Daniel. Not from Emily. It was from Sydney, the surrogate. We hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. After she terminated the agreement with Daniel and Emily, she'd gone quiet, understandably. I always hoped she was okay. She had been just as caught in the storm as I was. The letter was short, handwritten, careful. She thanked me, again, for telling her the truth. For walking into that baby shower when I could have just disappeared. For not letting them get away with rewriting everything in their favor. And then she told me something that made my heart stop. She had a daughter. Biologically hers this time. No surrogacy. Just her and a donor. And she had named the baby
Clara.
I hope that's okay, she wrote. I wanted her to carry the name of a woman who taught me how to walk away from people who lie and toward the life I deserve. I cried. Not the bitter, broken crying I used to do. This was different. This was grief that had finally learned to let go. Sydney had moved on.
Built something.
Grown a life out of ashes just like I had. We weren't friends. Not really. But we were sisters in survival. I wrote her back. Told her I was honored. That Clara was a beautiful name. That I was proud of her. That maybe one day, when our kids were older, they could meet. Just once. Just to see what hope looked like when it survived hell. I never expected a legacy. But it found me anyway. And as for Daniel,
he stayed gone.
No more letters. No more calls. Just a fading ghost in my rear-view mirror. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he moved out of state, took a lower-paying job, and kept mostly to himself. Emily, too. Whatever future they tried to build on deception never took root. Because things built on lies don't grow. But things built on truth? They bloom. One spring morning, I was sitting in the yard with Miles.
He was 4 now.
Playing in the dirt with a stick, completely fascinated with a beetle he'd found. Eli came out carrying coffee and sat beside me. We watched in silence for a moment. Then he said, I know this isn't what you planned, but does it feel like home? I didn't have to think.
Yes.
Not the one I thought I'd have, but the one I needed. He looked at me. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box, and placed it in my lap. No speech. No dramatic kneel. Just a quiet, steady offering. Inside, a simple ring. I didn't cry. I just nodded. And whispered, yeah, I'm ready. We didn't call it starting over. We called it starting real. We got married in a courthouse. No white dress. Just Miles between us, holding both our hands, asking if we could get pizza after.
We did.
And in that small, greasy booth, with tomato sauce on his nose and cheese in his hair, Miles looked at us and said, we're a team now. Yes, baby. We always were. Sometimes people ask me if I regret anything. If I could go back, would I change it? Avoid Daniel? Skip the heartbreak? And honestly,
no.
Because I wouldn't have Miles. I wouldn't have the strength I found after crawling out of that nightmare. I wouldn't have known what real love felt like for myself, for my child, for the quiet life we built one scar at a time. Daniel tried to break me, but I healed. Emily tried to take what I wanted most, but I found something better. And through all of it, I became someone I actually like. Someone my son can look up to. Someone who doesn't just survive the fire, but becomes the spark that lights something new. And that's it. This is the end of my story. But if you're still listening, maybe it's because you're in your own chapter 1. Maybe you're in the heartbreak, or the healing, or the part where it still hurts too much to breathe. Wherever you are, keep going. Your peace is waiting. Hit subscribe if this story meant something to you. Because maybe, just maybe, you'll write your own one day. And when you do, I hope it ends with the words, I made it.